Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines. We're pleased to have on the show Judge Tony Marabella. He's a judge in the 19th Judicial District, but he also heads up the drug court. He's going to tell you why and point out how important it is to help folks who are addicts to drugs or alcohol break the slavery that they have. So he's saving lives with the drug court, but he's also saving $30,000 per person per year. That's the difference if you go through drug court versus if you don't. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Judge Tony Marabella. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Sean Fagan, and Corey Ogeron, and our entire staff for letting us come into your homes for the last 10 years via Legal Lines. We hope that you've come to a greater understanding of how the law works and how the government works for you. So from all of us, thank you. Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and we're very pleased to have on the show today Judge Tony Marabella. He is a judge for the 19th JDC, focuses in the criminal realm. Judge, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks for
having me.
having
It's good to see
me.
you again.
Thank you.
Tell the folks a little bit about yourself, just so they kind of feel an understanding of why they should care what you say.
All right. I'm from Baton Rouge. I went to Catholic high school. I graduated from LSU undergraduate school. I went to USL for a few years, but I graduated from LSU. Graduated from LSU Law School in 1973. When I left law school, I went to work for the parish attorney's office. I was an assistant city prosecutor for about a year.
So you were the guy that went after the bad guys, so to speak.
I did on the traffic tickets. Judge Hawk Daniels, if you remember Hawk, I practiced in front of Hawk for quite some time. One of my classmates was Doug Morrow. He and I got to be real good friends. Doug was in the district attorney's office at the time. And Doug would come over, I guess he was bored, he'd come to the city court. At the time, city court was right next to the old courthouse, which is now the sheriff's office. The municipal building, we tried all the cases in the municipal building, and he'd come over a couple of times. And he indicated to me, he said, he was working for O.C. Brown, he said, we've got an opening. He said, I would suggest that you apply for it. You'd be a good trial lawyer, why don't you come and work for us? And I applied for it, and O.C. Brown hired me, and I went to work for the DA's office, and I was in the DA's office for almost 4 years.
So again, going after the bad guys.
We really were.
You're prosecuting the criminals.
I was very fortunate. I was able to, I moved up pretty rapidly in the office. I was in the career criminal section.
Wow.
We prosecuted the career criminal section. They call them the three strikes now. But we prosecuted those. We tried cases pretty much every week. And then my last year, I was the section chief in Judge Gonzalez's court. And then I left there and went to work for Alton Moran at the time. Just started the public defender's office. And he offered me a job as well as several other assistant district attorneys. And we started what is now the staff system of the public defender's office.
So switch sides.
I did, and I was there for about a year and a half. Then I went into private practice with Brian Bush, and Brian and I practiced together.
Who was also a district attorney.
Brian and I practiced together until he got elected district attorney. And then John DiGiulio and I practiced for a couple of years together. And then Hiller Moore and I practiced together for a few years. And then in 2002, I decided to run for judge, and after practicing law for 30 years, and here I am.
10 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long.
It has been.
It's time flying.
Especially when you're old. When you get old.
It's really moving fast now, isn't it? It's unique because you are still on the criminal bench. And the way the system had worked in the past in the 19th JDC is the newcomers would come in, they'd have to handle the criminal docket, and when an availability came up on the civil side, most of the judges moved up to the civil bench and really didn't handle the criminal stuff anymore. You haven't done that. Lou Daniels, in fact, hasn't done it. There are a few that haven't done it, but why?
Well, I think what has happened, it used to be in the old courthouse, the criminal floor was on the 6th floor. And the civil floors were the 7th and the 8th floor. And we'd always say the judge moved up, and truly that's what a judge did. And, most of the judges who ran for judge hadn't done much criminal work. Criminal assistant DAs and criminal defense lawyers are a relative
Oddity.
a change in the last 15 or 20 years. It used to be civil lawyers that would run, who would run for judge, and they spent most of their careers out of the criminal courtroom, and they didn't want to go into a criminal courtroom, but they did, and that's kind of what you do. It's the seniority system. Right. And but what started happening, and I think Bonnie Jackson, who was an assistant public defender, Lou Daniel who was an assistant district attorney. I had a career in criminal defense. Most of us, Mike Irwin is another one. Mike was an assistant district attorney. Most of us had spent our careers in criminal work, and when we got on the bench, we enjoyed doing it. A lot of the other ones didn't want to do it, so we just stayed. So consequently, most of the people, there's still a couple of judges who are on the criminal bench that I think would like to move up to the civil bench, but not many of us. I think we've got a good criminal bench that will probably stay that criminal bench for quite some time.
You're unique also because you have really spent 10 years dealing with the drug addict, drug abuser side, alcohol abuser side via the drug court. Explain that to folks.
We have in 1997, well, a long time ago, probably in the early 80s, I think the drug court concept was created in Miami. A judge in Miami decided that there was a better way of probably dealing with the drug problem. And it was more treatment oriented. I want to say, and I honestly can't remember the exact date, but I want to say in either the late 80s or the early 90s, the judges of the 19th Judicial District had decided that they wanted to set up a drug court. It wasn't modeled after the Miami sort of drug court that we all know today. It was really designed to be a fast prosecution court. It was designed
so it wasn't to help the defendant.
No, it was designed to get drug dealers off the streets, to put people in prison, and to do all of those things. Judge Foster Sanders, agreed to take it for the judges, and he ran it for approximately, I want to say a year, a little over a year. He ran it as a fast prosecution court. There was very little treatment involved at the time. Judge Downing took it over approximately a year later. Judge Downing moved more into the treatment aspect of it. Still prosecuting,
sure,
but also looking into the new component of the drug treatment.
And in fact was recognized, as I recall,
absolutely. Everybody was trying to go into that. Everyone was realizing that was a concern. About a year or so later, I think Judge Saya took it over. Judge Saya had it for about a year, kind of followed the same model as Judge Downing. And if I'm not mistaken, Judge Downing took it over again. And then Judge Morvant got elected with a new batch of judges that came in I want to say 97 is when they all took the bench. Judge Morvant, being the least senior of the judges, ended up taking the drug court, and Judge Morvant took the drug court. Judge Morvant had come straight from the civil arena. I don't know that, I'm sure he's probably handled a few criminal cases, but he was sort of thrown in there. And Judge Morvant was actually on the 7th floor, really totally away from all of the other judges as well. So for 6 years, he labored with that full drug court pretty much alone. And also in 1997, the latter part of 1997, the Louisiana legislature, recognizing the problem and recognizing the concern, passed a law. It's entitled 13, and it's the drug court statute.
So it gave the authority and I guess potential revenues.
It set up the drug court statute. It set up eligibility and how it would be run. And it was funded directly by the legislature. I think it was funded to the courts by the legislature. About 3 or 4 years later, the Supreme Court established a Supreme Court drug court office, and the money goes now from the legislature to the Supreme Court, and they're the ones who administer to all of the drug courts.
All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines, Judge Toni Marabella. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Sean Fagan, and Corey Ogeron, and our entire staff for letting us come into your homes for the last 10 years via Legal Lines. We hope that you've come to a greater understanding of how the law works and how the government works for you. So from all of us, thank you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, we're very pleased to have on the show Judge Toni Marabella. He is a judge on the 19th JDC, but he's also the drug court judge who deals with folks who frankly need some treatment. They're addicts or abusers. Judge, again, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's tell the folks, because you heard the intro, you have a very peculiar or expertise because you are dealing with folks who are addicts. And there's a reason why the courts have moved in this direction to provide a treatment option. Explain that to the folks.
Well, the statistics clearly show that 86% of all crimes are committed by people who are either on drugs or alcohol or stealing or committing crimes to get drugs or alcohol.
So 86 out of 100 guys or ladies who appear in front of you are doing drugs?
The parish prison holds 1,500 people. 1,300 of them are there because of drugs or alcohol. And we have approximately 120 people in our drug court program, which is a small number of the percentage of the people who actually commit the crimes. And there's a lot of reasons why that's the case, because the way the drug court works, the way the law is set up, the district attorney is the gatekeeper. The district attorney determines who will come into the drug court. There's an eligibility requirement. We will not take anybody in there who has violence in their past or is a crime of violence or sex offenders.
Okay.
We can take a person who has been convicted more than twice is not eligible for probation. But if he comes into the drug court program and he's eligible and he's recommended by the district attorney, we can take people who come in as a third offender. So we take a lot of people who come in as third offenders. So we've got the district attorney who is the gatekeeper, who is getting people to come in. And I want to say, and I cannot say enough about Doug Morrow when he was the district attorney, or Hiller Moore, who is the DA now. They have been absolutely supportive of this program. Darwin Miller, who is the assistant DA, who is in my court as my section chief, who runs the drug court for us, was the judge for Foxy Sanders, for Frank Zia, for Bob Downing, for Billy Moore, was the DA for them. He's been in there a long time. After the DA recommends, what happens is we evaluate, the drug team evaluates. We have professionals who evaluate them to determine that they are eligible to come into the program, that they're not just drug pushers and not really addicts or abusers.
But they're ill, in essence.
Once we determine that, they have to voluntarily agree to come into the program.
So they've got to plead guilty?
They have to plead guilty. We are a post-conviction court.
Okay, that's an important distinction. Folks need to understand that.
They have to plead guilty to come into court.
So they're accepting responsibility for the bad behavior for which they've been arrested, for which the DA is prosecuting them.
And they are, and they're put on probation. And the probation, ordinary probation, they report to a probation officer once a month. Sometimes, because probation officers are so overworked and they've got so much caseload, sometimes it's just a phone call every month. The people who are on probation in drug court go to class every day of the week. They are 3 hours every day. They're at the drug treatment program. They're drug tested 3 and 4 times a week randomly. They have to have a job, they have to do community service, and they have to come see me once a week. I see everybody in the drug treatment program once a week. The probation officers and I, in our drug court team, the district attorneys and all of the public defenders that are involved in the drug court, we meet at 7:30 on Monday morning in my jury room, and we go over every case. And then at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, I go into the courtroom and I review everybody that's on probation, and we talk to them. If they've messed up, if they're not following all of the rules, we have a lot of rules and we're very strict. If they don't follow those rules, then they end up either having to do community service or going to jail or whatever. Many of these people have never had any structure in their lives at all.
Judge, let's talk about that, because we were talking about what happened over the last 30 years is folks realizing that, in the criminal system, realizing that these folks were not being deterred by the system that we had. It wasn't working. The
Correct.
recidivism rate was out of the roof. I mean, they just kept coming back over and over and over and over. And it was a recognition that prison, as I understand the whole concept, is to deter the person from repeating that behavior.
Exactly.
And getting the person off the street to protect the general public. But it wasn't working with these folks because they were addicts.
Sure.
They had a disease. They couldn't stop. And therefore, something had to take place to give them that ability to stop. And that's kind of the genesis.
And that's really what we do. You know, one of the things that I talk to a lot of people about, and they're very surprised to hear this, is that when experts that I have gone to and learned things from, what they say is you know, a lot of people believe that doing drugs is a choice. Just quit. You know, you can quit. You know. The experts tell us that we have 13 pleasure centers in our brains. The pleasure centers are the things that if you love opera, it hits the pleasure center in your brain. If you love chocolate, hits the pleasure center in your brain. All of those sorts of things. So you think of whatever it is that gives you pleasure, there are 13 of those in your brain. The experts tell me there are two things in this world that hit all 13 at the same time: cocaine and methamphetamines.
Holy moly.
And
so the brain just loses all rationality.
Think about that. Think about hitting all of those pleasure centers at one time. I mean, what a feeling that must be. But realizing, you and I realize that today, and we know this, you never get that high again, but you chase it, and you chase it, and you chase it. And that's why they do the things they do. I mean, we see people who shoot up between their toes and things like that.
Trying so y'all won't find out who.
Things that as we sit here rationally,
you would never
how can
think about
someone do something like that? It's because it is that addictive.
Well, you've told me that you actually have them come in court high as a kite.
Absolutely, there's no question about that. I put 2 people in jail this afternoon who came into court knowing they were coming into court, knowing I was going to drug test.
Because you said you can get the test there at the courthouse.
Absolutely, we got a drug test, and they knew and I told them, the next time you come, I'm drug testing you again, and boom, they went right back to jail. They just can't seem to stop.
And so that's the reason why this drug court program exists. But the sad truth is that what? How many folks you helping right now?
We have 120 people in our program right now.
And there's thousands and thousands and thousands.
There really are. There really are. Now, what we do, you know, there are other programs. The good news for us is that a lot of the churches, a lot of the faith-based programs have substance abuse programs that they do, and we work in connection with a lot of them.
Is there exchange of information and expertise?
There is a lot of exchange of information and a lot of expertise. We've had a lot of people who have worked in our drug court program who now are working for some of these programs in the churches. And we get, you know, we're very fortunate because I think, you know, and let me say this, I appreciate all of the very kind things you've said about me, but I do very little compared to the people who are in the treatment center, the people who are day-to-day, do all of the heavy lifting, working with those people. It's phenomenal the kind of work that they do and what they do. They're very, very dedicated to what they do. And we see the results of that all the time. And we have a very good alumni program of those people who graduate that return and they come back and they help us do the kind of things that we can't do sometimes.
Well, let's continue this on the last segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines and Judge Toni Marabella. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Sean Fagan, and Corey Ogeron, and our entire staff for letting us come into your homes for the last 10 years via Legal Lines. We hope that you've come to a greater understanding of how the law works and how the government works for you. So from all of us, thank you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith again. We're very pleased to have on the show Judge Toni Marabella. He's a judge on the 19th JDC with a big focus on drug court to deal with that scenario. Judge, we're talking about the fact that there's a need for dealing with folks who are addicts this way instead of just throwing them in prison. Let's talk about the recidivism rate. You told me a statistic that you're quite proud of and deservedly so.
We are. Last year, of all of the drug courts in Louisiana, we had the second lowest recidivism rate at 2.8%, which is phenomenal.
So out of 10 people that go through the program, only 2.8 people.
Actually,
almost
100.
three.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'm saying that wrong.
yeah. So,
So out of 100 people, almost 3.
2 or 3 people
come
are
back.
the ones that come back.
It's unbelievable.
And it really is phenomenal. Many of the drug courts aren't that high, but they're certainly much lower
In the teens, I think you
than,
told me.
than the rest of the recidivism rate. When you look at someone who's going to jail, someone who ends up going to jail, within 3 to 6 months, they are back doing drugs again. They may or may not. Now, I've never been to jail other than to visit, but they tell me drugs are everywhere in jail. So
Wow.
you almost aren't just
So you're not even
warehoused.
weaned off of it if you're thrown in prison because you're still getting
And
it.
of course, they make drugs out of common household things. But they're trying to do a good job. In
That's
the
an
prisons,
incredible
and
statistic,
I
though.
do understand.
Because what I'm hearing is the recidivism rate, meaning they go back to jail, they go to prison, then they
Oh,
come out, and they're back within a year or two.
Most people, 65% of all people who are revoked on probation and parole are back in because of drugs and alcohol.
So clearly it
it's
works. Clearly it's successful. And let's also point out that Louisiana has the highest percentage of its population in jail in the world.
In the world, that's exactly right.
In the world.
That's exactly right.
So clearly we have a huge problem, and we seem like we have a way of dealing with this component of crime. Give them the best news, and that's the cost of this stuff comparison.
The way we've been able to calculate it, and the way the Supreme Court does it, is it costs approximately $4,800 per defendant to be in the drug court. That same defendant to be housed for a year in the penitentiary or state prisons is $35,000.
Unbelievable.
Savings of
$30,000
$30,000 per person. And it's just unbelievable the savings that we have. In addition to that, those people do pay a little bit. They don't pay much because we've got some people who really are indigent when they come into the drug court. But the drug court, and let me say this, the drug court spans the entire spectrum of demographics and socioeconomics. I mean, we've had doctors, lawyers, we've had drug pushers who've lived on the street, homeless, all of the, we do the whole span, and we've had all kinds of people in there. Now, we also, we mentioned earlier about funding in the legislature. I would be remiss if I didn't say that the Louisiana legislature has been very, very good to the drug court programs.
And you're a liaison committee.
I have gone to the. I used to go to the legislature as a criminal defense lawyer, and they talked to me. They'd be nice, but they just ignored me. I do go there sometimes for other judicial issues. They listen, but they help. Sometimes they don't. When you go there and you talk about drug court issues, they're very attentive. They're very concerned because almost everyone up there has been touched in some way by drug abuse. And
Judge, what is the prison population of Louisiana? Do you have any idea?
There was an article, a series of articles in I guess now the closed Times-Picayune in New Orleans that had a lot of statistics about the population. I'm not certain what it is, but it's huge.
Thousands and thousands.
It is. It's thousands of people.
And so this is a way to save hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, and not only that, but let's talk about a person who's charged with possession of cocaine. 5 years is the maximum they can get on a possession of cocaine charge. You send them to prison for 5 years, they're going to parole out in about a year and a half. They're probably not going to get very much treatment in prison. And if they do, and I have to say, Secretary LeBlanc has done a fantastic job with trying to get some treatment facilities and some things in the prisons. But the statistics clearly show that even if you go and get treatment, If you don't have follow-up when you get out or when after you're out of treatment, it's not going to work. You're going to fall by the wayside. That's why the drug courts really work so well. It's not because of Toni Marabella, the judge, but it is because there is a judge with a hammer that makes these people do the things that they're supposed to do. We keep them in line. And you know, of all of the people that graduate, I'm sure some of them slip through and just kind of fake it and just do it to stay out of jail. I can tell you 100% of them come to court to get out of jail. I mean, they come into the drug court getting out of jail. They don't hear the first thing I say about what we're doing or why we're doing it. But almost every one of them, certainly the ones that graduate, there comes a point in time when you can see it in their eyes, and it's different with all of them. You can see it in their eyes that they're not doing this just to stay out of jail. They have switched because they like the lifestyle that they're living now. They're enjoying the fact that their families trust them again, their children or their parents have taken them back in. It's amazing to see and to watch that transformation.
Well, we're giving them a shot at the dream, which is of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And when you're an addict to drugs, you're a slave. That's the bottom line.
You have no choice.
Let's talk to the folks pretty quickly about the process, because you know, we've talked about drug court, but it's a long process. It's tedious. It's time consuming.
The quickest you can get through is a year and a half. We graduated 11 people on Monday. One of them was in the drug court program for 4.5 years. Another one was we had 2 of them that went through the drug program in roughly 18 or 19 months. Both of those persons were sanction free, which meant they went through the entire program without me having to give them community service, additional community service, or jail sanctions or anything else. That means they were clean. They had a new beginning. And to graduate from drug court, you have to be sober, absolutely sober for 6 months. You have to have a full-time job. You have to have an employment plan and program. You have to have a life plan. We have to see all of those things to sort of check you out for graduation. And you have to, once you approve all of those things and you've gone through the program successfully, that's when you graduate.
And then you've indicated they can't basically hide because you guys are monitoring them every week, random drug tests. They screw up, you got the big stick, which is prison.
They get caught, you know, all the time. You know, one of the things that we deal with too that we see a lot is cheating on drug tests and all of these newfangled fake drugs, they call them. They have this bath salts.
Where people chewing off other people's
and it was horrible. It was horrible, and you can buy those at service stations.
Well, Judge, thank you so much for your service in this regard. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for the good work. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. Judge Toni Marabella, thank you for being with us.